So urea cycle. So what happens in urea cycle? So urea that is synthesized in the liver is released into the blood, is freely filtered by the glomerulus of the kidney, but partially reabsorbed in the renal tubules, and is excreted by the kidneys in urine. The blood urea level is used as a screening test for evaluation of kidney function. So if you remember, in the lab, many patients, we check urea and creatinine are the most common test that we are doing, and even our hospital is doing this urea test free of cost. So blood urea, why they are testing the blood urea levels for suspected patients? Because this serves as a screening test for the kidney function. So blood urea, by doing the blood urea test, you will come to know the function of kidneys. So that is why this urea test is very important. And normal plasma urea level, plasma or serum or blood urea level is 20 to 40 milligrams per deciliter. If you remember, of course there will be some minor changes. Some labs they say 15 to 40, some labs they say 15 to 35, like this. But the common normal range that usually will be followed is 20 to 40 milligrams per deciliter. This is a normal urea level in the plasma or in the serum or in the blood. It is 20 to 40 milligrams per deciliter. So 20 to 40 grams of urea is excreted per day in urine also. So every day urea that is filtered by the kidneys from the blood is excreted in urine. So that ranges about 20 to 40 grams per day. So kidneys excrete urea also in urine, that is 20 to 40 grams per day. Now see, this is the urea cycle. Follow carefully. Again I will give you the explanation slides also. This slide we will discuss clearly. Now this urea cycle is also called as Krebs-Henschleit cycle. Urea cycle is also called as Krebs-Henschleit cycle. The other name for urea cycle is Krebs-Henschleit cycle. So in this, urea is synthesized from ammonia and carbon dioxide in the liver, and in the liver the subcellular site is partly mitochondrial, partly cytosolic. Means some of the reactions are taking place in the mitochondria, some of the reactions are taking place in the cytoplasm. That you should remember. Here down you can see the box. In that I have mentioned as first two reactions occur in mitochondria. So in the urea cycle, first two reactions occur in mitochondria. The remaining reactions of urea cycle takes place in cytosol. So first reactions, here I have given the number of sequence of reactions also. You can see number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. So total there are 5 steps in this urea cycle or Krebs-Henschleit cycle. Out of these 5 steps, first 2 steps are taking place in the mitochondria, and the remaining 3 steps will take place in cytoplasm. Okay, so that you should remember. First 2 reactions of urea cycle takes place in the mitochondria, and the remaining reactions of urea cycle are taking place in cytoplasm. Now see the first step. It is the condensation of ammonia with the carbon dioxide. Since ammonia is a toxic compound, it has to be detoxified immediately from the body. So ammonia and carbon dioxide that is formed in TCA cycle is used in the first step of urea cycle, and the enzyme is carbamoyl phosphate synthase. Carbamoyl phosphate synthase. This is called CPS in short. CPS, carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1. It is called CPS1, carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1. This enzyme is present in mitochondria. So what this enzyme will do? This enzyme condenses the ammonia and carbon dioxide and converts it into a compound called carbamoyl phosphate. Since carbamoyl phosphate is synthesized from ammonia and carbon dioxide, the enzyme that is involved in this reaction is called as carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1, CPS1 in short. Here, this enzyme requires N-acetyl glutamate as a coenzyme. N-acetyl glutamate as a coenzyme. So ATP, one ATP molecule is required for the condensation of this reaction. So ATP is converted to ADP and inorganic phosphate, and it also requires, whenever there is conversion of ATP to ADP is there is requirement of magnesium ions also. So this is the first step of urea cycle, takes place in the mitochondria, and the enzyme is carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1. It catalyzes the condensation of ammonia and carbon dioxide and synthesizes the compound called carbamoyl phosphate. Now in the second step of the urea cycle, see carefully, number 2 is there. In the second step of the second step of the urea cycle, this carbamoyl phosphate reacts with a compound called L-ornithine. L-ornithine. So it condenses with the L-ornithine. Carbamoyl phosphate condenses with L-ornithine, and this reaction is catalyzed by the enzyme ornithine transcarbamylase. So ornithine transcarbamylase catalyzes the condensation of carbamoyl phosphate and L-ornithine and results in the formation of a compound called L-citrulline. L-citrulline. So here there is release of phosphate from carbamoyl phosphate. In inorganic phosphate that is present in carbamoyl phosphate is released, and carbamoyl group and ornithine group will be there, and it gets the resulting compound is called as L-citrulline. This reaction is catalyzed by the enzyme ornithine transcarbamylase. So first and second steps of urea cycle are taking place in the mitochondria, because these enzymes are available only in mitochondria. This takes place in mitochondria. Now this citrulline comes out of the mitochondria and enters into the cytoplasm. Okay. So in the cytoplasm there is aspartate amino acid. So this aspartate amino acid reacts with the citrulline by the enzyme, by the action of the enzyme argininosuccinic acid synthase. It gets converted into a compound called argininosuccinate. The third step is reaction of citrulline with aspartate by the action of enzyme argininosuccinic acid synthase. It gets converted to a compound called argininosuccinate. This reaction is the third reaction of urea cycle and takes place in the cytoplasm, and this is also an energy consuming reaction. So ATP is converted to AMP, not ADP. So here the phosphate is converted to PPI, pyrophosphate, not inorganic phosphate. This is released as pyrophosphate, and the resulting compound is argininosuccinate. Okay, and in the fourth step, the enzyme argininosuccinase cleaves this argininosuccinate into L-arginine and fumaric acid. So fumarate is formed in the fourth step of the urea cycle, and this fumarate enters into the TCA cycle, and there it gets converted to malate, or it gets converted to finally to oxaloacetate. So this is how urea cycle is linked with the TCA cycle. Now the L-arginine that is formed in the fourth step in the cytoplasm is converted to ornithine again by the action of the enzyme arginase. So arginase cleaves arginine into two compounds called urea and L-ornithine. So urea is formed as a byproduct in the fifth reaction of the urea cycle, and this is eliminated in the from the liver cells and is excreted into the blood. From the blood it is transported to the kidneys, where it gets filtered, okay, and gets excreted also. So the fifth step of urea cycle is the cleavage of L-arginine into ornithine and urea. which is a non-toxic compound. So this is how a toxic ammonia is converted to urea. And to operate this cycle, it requires 2 ammonia molecules and 2 carbon dioxide molecules. So in the first reaction 2 ATP are utilized, in the third reaction again 2 ATPs, total 4 ATPs. Only 4 ATPs this urea cycle is utilizing and detoxifying this ammonia into urea. Remember, 2 ammonia molecules and 2 carbon dioxide 1 carbon dioxide molecule is required, and 2 ATP is required in first step, and again another 2 ATP are required in the third step. So total 4 ATPs are utilized in urea cycle. So this is how urea is formed. Okay, so this is what urea cycle or Krebs-Hanslitt cycle. Now the same thing here I have shown you, but with the chemical structures and all is given here, and there is a demarcation of mitochondrial region and cytoplasm region. This here you can see in the mitochondria of the liver cells, the carbon dioxide is converted to bicarbonate, and this bicarbonate is used for the condensation with the ammonia, and by the enzyme carbamyl phosphate synthase 1 or CPS1, it gets converted to carbamyl phosphate. Carbamyl phosphate on reaction with the ornithine inside the mitochondria, by the enzyme ornithine transcarbamylase, it gets converted to citrulline, and citrulline is transported from the mitochondria into the cytoplasm, and in the cytoplasm this citrulline reacts with the ornithine which is present in the cytoplasm. Ornithine and citrulline are easily transportable across the mitochondrial membrane. So they can move from the mitochondria into the cytosol and from the cytosol into the mitochondria freely. So ornithine and citrulline moves in and out of the mitochondria from the cytoplasm. Okay. And this takes place in both the directions. So citrulline which is formed in mitochondria in the second step of urea cycle comes out of the mitochondria in the cytoplasm. This citrulline reacts with the condenses with the ornithine, and it gets converted to arginosuccinate. So this arginosuccinate formation requires the citrulline and aspartate. Citrulline and aspartate, they react by the enzyme action arginosuccinate synthase. It gets converted to arginosuccinate, and arginosuccinate by the enzyme arginosuccinate lyase is converted to arginine and fumarate, and by the action of the enzyme arginase it is cleaved into the ornithine and urea. So this is how urea is formed, and again ornithine which is used in the second reaction of the urea cycle is regenerated at the end of the urea cycle and is used again in the second reaction. So this is looks like a closed cycle, but the byproducts that are formed during urea cycle in the third step, that is utilization of aspartate, and the byproduct that is formed as in the fourth step is fumarate, is entering into the TCA cycle, and in the third step the aspartate that is required for condensation with citrulline comes from the TCA cycle again. So this is how urea cycle is interrelated and interconnected with the TCA cycle. Now in this diagram you can clearly see how urea cycle is linked with the TCA cycle. So this is called integration between urea cycle and TCA cycle. Now see carefully, this diagram is taken from the U. Satyanarayana textbook of biochemistry. There you can see in the urea cycle this diagram is seen. So in this diagram you can see ammonia and carbon dioxide reaction, the first step of urea cycle, and formation of carbamyl phosphate. Carbamyl phosphate reacts with the ornithine and results in the formation of compound called citrulline, and citrulline reacts with the aspartate and converts into arginosuccinate. This aspartate comes from oxaloacetate, which is an intermediate compound of TCA cycle. Oxaloacetate reacts with glutamate and forms aspartate. So indirectly oxaloacetate is responsible for the formation of aspartate, and this is required for urea cycle for the synthesis of compound arginosuccinate. So indirectly oxaloacetate is linked with the urea cycle by the formation of aspartate. Now this arginosuccinate undergoes cleavage into arginine and fumarate. This fumarate enters into the TCA cycle where it gets converted to malate, and malate in turn results in the formation of oxaloacetate, and oxaloacetate again by reaction with the glutamate converted into aspartate. So this is how urea cycle is related with the TCA cycle. So the aspartate that is coming from oxaloacetate is utilized in the urea cycle, converted into arginosuccinate, and this arginosuccinate is cleaved into arginine and fumarate is again entering into the TCA cycle, gets converted to malate and oxaloacetate. So again it results in the formation of aspartate. Now the arginine that is formed from arginosuccinate is again cleaved into two compounds, urea and ornithine. So urea is formed as a byproduct and ornithine is regenerated, which again is utilized for the reaction with the carbamyl phosphate and results in the formation of citrulline. So this is a vicious cycle, continuous cycle. These two are interconnected. Not only urea cycle and TCA cycle, in the body many metabolisms are interconnected. So each metabolism is interconnected by somehow. So this is a very metabolism, that is why it is a very complicated process to understand. So here in this class, what you have to understand is urea cycle is connected with the TCA cycle, and some of the reactions of urea cycle are connected with the TCA cycle. These are called as anaplerotic reactions of urea cycle. Anaplerotic means the regeneration of substrates as and when it is required. Means the substrate aspartate is required for the formation of arginosuccinate comes from TCA cycle. Again, TCA cycle requires this oxaloacetate, because this oxaloacetate is reacting with glutamate and forming aspartate. It should not be finished. Of course, if it is getting finished, then TCA cycle will not operate. So for that matter, what will happen? This arginosuccinate that is formed in the urea cycle is cleaved to arginine and fumarate enters into TCA cycle, gets converted to malate and oxaloacetate. So likewise, the continuous removal of these substrates and replenishment of these substrates takes place because of the interconnection of urea cycle and TCA cycle. So that is why these reactions are called as anaplerotic reactions. Anaplerotic reactions. And finally, urea is formed as a byproduct during this Krebs-Hanslied cycle or urea cycle, and ornithine is regenerated, which is used for the condensation with the carbamyl phosphate for the formation of citrulline again and again. So this is how the substrates will be regenerated and replenished continuously. This is what anaplerotic reactions. I think you have understood now about urea cycle and its connection with the TCA cycle and the anaplerotic reactions also. Now the differences between CPS1 and CPS2. I told you the first step of the urea cycle is the condensation of ammonia, 2 molecules of ammonia and 2 molecules of carbon dioxide into the formation of a compound called carbamyl phosphate. And this reaction takes place by the enzyme carbamyl phosphate synthase 1. So there is another enzyme called carbamyl phosphate synthase 2. The CPS1 is present in the mitochondria, whereas CPS2 is present in cytosol. And CPS1 is associated with the urea cycle, whereas CPS2 is associated with the pyrimidine biosynthesis. I have told you about the de novo synthesis of pyrimidines. In de novo synthesis of pyrimidines, I have told that CPS2 is required. If you remember, again after this class you open and read the pyrimidine biosynthesis and urea cycle again, then you will understand where I have told CPS1 and CPS2 enzymes. Positive effector for CPS1 is N-acetyl glutamate, and for CPS2 there is no requirement of N-acetyl glutamate. Sources of nitrogen for CPS1 is ammonia, whereas for CPS2 action is the glutamine. Source of nitrogen for CPS2 is glutamine. Inhibitors for CPS1 are not there, but for CPS2 there is an inhibitor called CTP, cytidine triphosphate. So this table shows the differences between two enzymes CPS1 and CPS2. CPS1 is carbamyl phosphate synthase 1, which is an enzyme that is involved in the urea cycle. CPS2 is involved with the pyrimidine biosynthesis. CPS1 is present in mitochondria, whereas CPS2 is present in cytosol. CPS1 requires N-acetylglutamine as a cofactor for its activation. CPS2 does not require N-acetylglutamine. And CPS1 acts on ammonia, whereas CPS2 acts on the nitrogen substrate, that is glutamine. CPS1 has no inhibitors, and CPS2 has got an inhibitor. This CTP, cytidine triphosphate, can inhibit CPS2. These are the differences between CPS1 and CPS2. And coming to the energetics of urea cycle, CPS1 of the first enzyme of the first reaction of urea cycle requires 2 ATPs. Again in the third step, again 2 more ATPs are utilized. That is arginosuccinate synthase reaction. Arginosuccinate synthase reaction. Another 2 ATPs are utilized. So total 4 ATPs are utilized for the formation of urea in urea cycle or Krebs-Hanslitt cycle. But fumarate that is formed can be converted to malate, and malate when oxidized to oxaloacetate in the TCA cycle produces 1 NADH, which is equivalent to 3 ATP molecules. So therefore net energy expenditure is only 1 high energy phosphate. So because this urea cycle is interconnected with the TCA cycle by fumarate, which is formed in urea cycle is going to the TCA cycle, and in the TCA cycle fumarate is converted to malate, and malate when it gets oxidized to oxaloacetate, it requires it involves the formation of NADH2. This NADH2 one molecule is equivalent to 3 ATP molecules. So already 3 ATPs are released over there. If 4 ATPs are utilized already, 3 ATPs again it is regenerating by getting oxidized to oxaloacetate. So only net consumption is only 1 ATP. Only 1 high energy phosphate is utilized in urea cycle. This is very important, energetics of urea cycle. You go through the slide carefully. Even I am going to give you the video link in YouTube. Later on you can follow it carefully. Go through the slides carefully and you can write it down. You can remember, recollect in this by seeing this video again. Now coming to the regulation of urea cycle. How this urea cycle is regulated? CPS1 is the rate limiting step in urea synthesis. Carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1 of the first step of the urea cycle is the rate limiting enzyme of urea cycle. It is allosterically activated by N-acetylglutamate. So CPS1 activation requires N-acetylglutamate. So it depends, the availability of N-acetylglutamate is required for the activation of CPS1. So high glutamate levels leads to increased availability of N-acetylglutamate, and thereby enhanced activity of CPS1 can be seen. So high glutamate levels, when you will see more amount of glutamate levels are present, means more amount of NAG is available. When more amount of NAG is there, CPS1 will get activated and ammonia is trapped, carbon dioxide is trapped and gets converted to carbamoyl phosphate. So the regulatory step of urea cycle is the first step, catalyzed by the enzyme CPS1. N-acetylglutamate, hepatic concentration, means the concentration of N-acetylglutamate in the liver increases after intake of a protein diet. If we eat more protein, it increases the more availability of N-acetylglutamate, because proteins means nothing but amino acids. This glutamate is nothing but amino acid. So if you eat more protein diet, your glutamate concentration in the liver increases. So when this glutamate concentration in the liver increases, the availability of N-acetylglutamate also increases. Now when availability of N-acetylglutamate is increased, it gives stimulation to the carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1 enzyme. When carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1 gets activated, it traps the body ammonia and carbon dioxide and converts it into carbamoyl phosphate and activates all other enzymes of the urea cycle. So urea formation will be more when you eat more amount of protein diet. Means when you eat more non-vegetarian, your body urea concentration increases to a certain extent. That you should remember. Okay, this is an important point you should remember. Okay, so this is about the urea cycle and its regulation and its connection with the TCA cycle. So we have discussed about the urea cycle. Now we will stop with this urea cycle, and tomorrow